Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be exploring some seriously thought-provoking stuff from Jordan B. Peterson.
Oh,
Specifically, his ideas about balancing order and chaos. And we're going to be using his book, Beyond Order, 12 More Rules for Life, as our main guide,
okay.
along with some insights from his lectures and interviews that I found.
Sounds good.
We're not just going to keep it theoretical, though, right?
Right,
We're
yeah.
going to extract the practical stuff.
Yeah.
How this balance actually plays out in your life.
Right.
You know, from your relationships to your creativity to personal growth even.
Sure.
And to help illustrate these ideas,
Yeah.
we're going to be using examples from art,
Okay.
science, and mythology.
I like it.
So I think there's going to be some real aha moments along the way.
What I find fascinating about Peterson is how he uses all these different fields to explain this fundamental tension between order and chaos.
Yeah.
He argues that life itself is this constant dance between the two.
Okay, so let's break that down for a second.
Yeah.
What exactly do we mean when we say order and chaos in this context?
So think of order like the known, the
Okay.
structured, the predictable parts of life. It's your daily routine.
Yeah.
The laws of physics, the
Right.
values of a society.
Okay.
It gives you a sense of stability and security.
Right.
Chaos, on the other hand, that's the unknown, the unpredictable, the potential for danger,
Yeah.
but also opportunity.
Oh, interesting.
It's the stuff that disrupts your plans,
Huh.
the messy emotions we all struggle with,
Right.
even just the vast unknown universe that surrounds us.
It sounds like, according to Peterson, we need both.
Yeah, you got it.
Too much of one or the other is not a good thing.
Exactly. Too much order leads to stagnation. You don't grow.
Right.
Imagine a society with super rigid rules and no room for new ideas.
Yeah.
It would just crumble eventually.
And we get stale.
Yeah, totally. On the other hand, too much chaos
Yeah.
leads to overwhelming anxiety, even meaninglessness.
Oh, wow.
It's like a boat without a rudder, just tossed around by the waves.
I can see that.
So Peterson's point is you got to find that sweet spot,
Yeah.
that balance between the two to really thrive.
That makes a lot of sense. And, Peterson's talked about his own struggles with illness, right?
He has, yeah.
How has that shaped his thinking on order and chaos?
Well, he said that facing a serious health crisis
Mm-hmm.
forced him to confront chaos in a very real way.
Yeah.
It pushed him to reevaluate his priorities, to focus on what really mattered.
I can see that.
It seems like going through that really deepened his understanding of the importance of order and meaning in the face of all that chaos.
So this idea of finding meaning in the midst of chaos,
Yeah.
that's a big part of his work then.
It's central.
Okay.
He argues that confronting chaos head on,
Okay.
instead of avoiding it or denying it, is actually crucial for growth
Mhm.
and meaning making.
Okay.
It's in those moments of uncertainty, when you're wrestling with the unknown, that you discover your strength, your resilience, and ultimately your purpose.
I can definitely relate to that in my own life.
Yeah.
Sometimes my most creative breakthroughs come when I'm forced out of my comfort zone,
Absolutely.
when things are feeling a bit chaotic.
You've hit on a key point there.
Yeah.
Peterson connects chaos directly to creativity.
Oh, wow.
He uses the Babylonian creation myth as an analogy,
Really?
the Enuma Elish.
Okay.
You familiar with that one?
Vaguely.
Okay, so in this myth, the god Marduk creates the world out of this chaotic primordial sea called Tiamat.
Okay.
So this act of creation, it involves imposing order on chaos,
Mm-hmm.
bringing something new and beautiful out of this state of formless potential.
So are you saying that our creative struggles are like Marduk battling Tiamat?
Kinda. Yeah.
That's a pretty epic way to think about writer's block.
Right.
But how does this actually play out in real life?
Okay, so think of it this way. When you're facing a creative challenge,
Hmm.
whether it's writing a song or designing a product or solving a problem at work. Yeah.
You're basically stepping into that chaotic space of the unknown.
Okay.
You're wrestling with ideas, experimenting.
Uh-huh.
You're going to encounter setbacks, frustrations.
Yeah.
But it's through that process, that willingness to confront the chaos,
Okay.
that new and innovative solutions emerge.
So to be truly creative, we can't just stick to what we know.
Nope.
We have
Yeah.
to embrace a little messiness.
You got it.
Okay.
The most original ideas, they often come from venturing outside of our comfort zones,
Yeah.
from daring to explore new possibilities,
Mm-hmm.
even if it feels a bit chaotic at first.
Right.
It's like shaking up that snow globe of your mind
Yeah.
and seeing what new patterns form.
I like that.
Have you ever noticed that your most creative breakthroughs come after feeling stuck or lost?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There you go. I remember working with a client who was going through a major life transition, a divorce, a career change. It was a lot all at once.
Wow.
And in the midst of all that upheaval, she discovered this hidden talent for painting.
It was like all the chaos of her life unlocked this whole new dimension of creativity for her.
That's a perfect example of how chaos, even when it's painful,
Yeah.
can be a catalyst for growth and transformation.
Wow.
And it highlights how important it is to find that balance between order and chaos, not just in our creative endeavors, but in all aspects of our lives.
So true. So how does this balance play out in something like relationships?
You're right, those can be pretty chaotic.
They really can be.
We'll dive into that next time.
Great, looking forward to it. And for you listening, think about a time when you faced chaos and how it led to something unexpected or maybe even beautiful.
It's always there. Welcome back. Let's pick up where we left off.
Yeah, let's dive into how this order and chaos thing plays out in relationships.
Yeah, definitely.
Because as we said, those can be pretty chaotic.
It can be a real roller coaster sometimes.
They really can be.
But you know what's interesting?
What's that?
Peterson talks about how healthy relationships actually require both order and chaos.
Okay, so explain that a little bit more.
Okay, so you need those shared values,
Uh-huh.
those agreed upon routines, that foundation of stability.
Right, that's the order.
Exactly, that's the order.
Okay.
But you also need space for individuality,
Okay.
for spontaneity, for those unexpected moments of joy and passion.
Gotcha. And that's the chaos.
Exactly, that's the chaos.
So it's like finding that sweet spot, between too much routine and too much unpredictability.
Yeah, too much routine and you risk falling into boredom.
Right.
Too much unpredictability and you lose that sense of security and trust.
It's all about finding that balance.
Exactly. And Peterson really emphasizes the importance of communication.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
In navigating this balance.
Uh-huh.
He tells the story about a client who was struggling in her marriage.
Okay.
She was constantly frustrated with her husband. But instead of addressing these frustrations directly, she avoided those difficult conversations.
Oh, so she was hoping things would just magically resolve themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Like sweeping things under the rug.
Right. Which never really works.
It never does. Peterson explained to her that avoiding conflict actually allows the chaos of all those unspoken issues
Oh, wow.
to grow and fester.
Interesting.
It creates this undercurrent of resentment that can eventually erupt,
Not like a volcano.
Totally. Or lead to emotional distance and a breakdown of the connection.
So the key is to address those smaller irritations before they become major relationship earthquakes.
Precisely. It's like regular maintenance,
Yeah, like taking care of a car.
Exactly. You don't wait for the engine to blow up before changing the oil, right?
Right.
So those small, consistent efforts to communicate openly, to address issues as they arise,
Yeah.
helps keep the relationship running smoothly and prevents those major breakdowns.
It's like being proactive about tending the garden of your relationship,
I like that.
Making sure those weeds don't take over and choke out the flowers.
Beautiful analogy, and it's not just about addressing the negative stuff. It's also about celebrating the good, expressing appreciation.
Okay.
Nurturing those small moments of joy and connection.
So it's like consciously choosing to inject a little bit of positive chaos into the relationship.
That's a great way to put it. Keeps things exciting.
I love that it reminds me of another point Peterson makes about relationships.
Yeah.
He talks about attending a wedding in Sweden,
Okay.
and the couple held a lit candle during the ceremony.
Okay.
And he saw this as like a powerful symbol
Uh-huh.
of how two individuals come together under a higher ideal.
Yeah, those shared values, that commitment to something greater than themselves.
It's a beautiful image, isn't it?
It is, and it highlights how those shared values, that sense of purpose, can act as a guiding light, helping couples navigate the inevitable storms that come up in any long-term relationship.
It's like having that anchor,
Yeah.
that solid foundation that provides stability even when the waves are crashing all around you.
Beautiful imagery, and it brings us back to this idea of balance,
Between order and chaos.
Yeah, too much rigidity, and the flame of the candle might flicker out.
Right.
Too much chaos, and it might be extinguished altogether.
So in relationships, it's about finding that delicate balance between maintaining that solid foundation of order
Yeah.
while also allowing space for spontaneity and individual growth.
Exactly. And this idea of finding balance within ourselves.
Also, like our own internal order and chaos.
That's where the concept of the shadow self comes in.
Ooh, that sounds kind of intimidating.
Yeah, it can be a bit scary at first.
What is the shadow self? Is that
It's essentially those aspects of ourselves that we tend to repress or deny.
Oh, okay.
Our flaws, our insecurities, those darker impulses we'd rather not acknowledge.
So it's like that hidden room in a house that we keep locked up,
That's a great analogy.
even though we know it's there.
But Peterson argues that confronting our shadow selves,
Okay.
those difficult emotions and experiences we tend to avoid,
Yeah.
is crucial for personal growth.
Really?
He suggests that by bringing those hidden elements to light, we can integrate them into our understanding of ourselves and ultimately move towards wholeness.
Like the shadow elements hold a piece of the puzzle of who we are.
Exactly.
And by acknowledging them, we can create a more complete and authentic picture.
Yes, and by facing those darker aspects of ourselves,
Okay.
we gain a deeper understanding of our motivations, our fears, our limitations, allowing us to make more conscious and intentional choices.
That makes a lot of sense. But it's one thing to acknowledge those shadow elements exist.
Yeah,
It's another to actually confront them.
right.
How do we even begin to do that?
That's a great question, and one we'll explore further as we continue. But first, I want to pause and ask you, listening.
Yeah.
What comes to mind when you think about your own shadow self?
That's a good question.
What are those aspects of yourself you tend to hide or deny?
Mm-hmm.
What would it take for you to start bringing those elements into the light?
Those are great questions to reflect on. And remember, this isn't about judging yourself or feeling ashamed of those shadow elements.
Nope.
It's about understanding them,
Mm-hmm.
accepting them as part of who you are,
Right.
and ultimately integrating them into a more whole and authentic self. All right, welcome back to the deep dive. You ready to kind of like wrap this up and maybe uncover some tools that you can use right now in your life?
Let's do it. I think this last part might be the most useful yet. We've covered a lot, from understanding order and chaos to facing our shadow selves.
Yeah.
But now let's get into like the nitty-gritty of how Peterson's ideas can actually be applied to everyday life.
Yes, please. Let's talk actionable steps.
Yeah.
One thing that really stuck out to me was Peterson's advice on dealing with those like small everyday annoyances. You know, the little things that kind of bug you, but you tend to just brush them off.
He's a big believer in addressing those right away. Like there's that saying, don't sweat the small stuff.
Right. But it's all small stuff.
Exactly. But Peterson would say, you should sweat the small stuff
Right.
because those tiny annoyances, if you let them go unchecked, can snowball into much larger problems.
It's like letting dishes pile up in the sink.
Yes.
Ignoring it for a few days might not be a big deal, but if you let it go for weeks, you've got a full-blown health hazard on your hands.
Exactly. And he applies this not just to our personal lives, but to society as a whole.
Oh, wow. Okay.
He says we have a responsibility to confront those seemingly small instances of corruption, those little lies, those moments where we choose to look the other way.
Because if we don't, they accumulate, right?
Exactly. It becomes like a collective shadow self,
Oh, wow.
a societal blind spot that we've all chosen to ignore.
A very interesting way to think about it.
And to illustrate this, he uses this example from Egyptian mythology.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
The myth of Osiris, who was tricked and killed by his envious brother Set.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that one. So is Peterson saying that we're all potentially Osiris, like vulnerable to being betrayed by the Set in our lives?
Not quite. The story of Osiris highlights that his downfall wasn't just Set's betrayal.
It was also Osiris's own unwillingness to confront Set's manipulations early on.
Oh, so he was enabling him in a way.
Exactly. He chose to ignore the growing threat to maintain this like facade of harmony rather than addressing the problem head on.
Wow. So that's the danger Peterson's warning us about.
Yeah.
Those small acts of deception or malice, if left unchecked, can have really devastating consequences.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. But it's easy to feel overwhelmed by all of this, right? Like, we see so many problems in the world. Where do we even begin?
That's where Peterson's emphasis on personal responsibility comes in.
Oh.
Yeah, he'd say, focus on what you can control, your own actions, your own sphere of influence. Start small, tackle those dragons in your own life that you are equipped to slay.
So instead of trying to like solve world hunger, maybe I start by volunteering at a local food bank or something.
Exactly. It's about choosing to act to make a difference in whatever way you can within your own realm of capability.
Right. And through those small acts of courage, those moments where we choose to speak the truth, to act with integrity, to take responsibility, we start to tip the scales towards order, both within ourselves and in the world around us.
That feels a lot more manageable.
Right.
But let's switch gears for a second,
Okay.
because I'm curious. Peterson talks a lot about meaning and purpose.
Yeah.
but he also seems to really appreciate beauty. Is there a connection there?
That's a really insightful observation, actually. Peterson sees beauty as deeply connected to meaning and personal growth,
Oh, wow.
even to that idea of ordering chaos that we've been talking about.
So it's more than just aesthetics.
Yeah.
It's about, like, creating order out of chaos.
Exactly. He talks about his own efforts to create a beautiful and inspiring space in his home office.
Oh, wow.
Even amidst his incredibly busy schedule, he consciously carved out the time and energy to make his workspace reflect his values and aspirations.
It's like creating a sanctuary, a space where order and beauty reign supreme, even when the world outside feels chaotic and overwhelming.
I love that.
But it really resonates with me.
And Peterson suggests that this act of creating beauty, whether it's in our homes or our communities, or even in our interactions with others, can be a powerful force for good. It's a way to combat the forces of chaos, to bring order and meaning to our experiences, however small they may seem.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's like a reminder that we have agency, that we can choose to cultivate beauty and make the world a little brighter, even amidst all the darkness.
Absolutely.
Speaking of darkness, Peterson uses a lot of stories in his work. Why is that?
Because stories, whether they're ancient myths or personal anecdotes, provide this framework for understanding the world, for making sense of the complexities of life. They offer us heroes to emulate, villains to confront, and like these archetypal patterns to recognize in our own lives.
Yeah, like I remember how he uses the classic fairy tale of Sleeping Beauty
Yeah.
to illustrate the dangers of ignoring the shadow self, of trying to shield ourselves from the darkness that exists even in the most beautiful of fairy tales.
Exactly. Stories, Peterson argues, help us confront the full spectrum of human experience.
Okay.
The good, the bad, and everything in between. They remind us that life is not always easy, that there will be challenges.
Right.
But by facing those challenges with courage and integrity, we can emerge transformed.
So it's not about living in a fantasy world where everything is perfect and beautiful.
Nope.
It's about acknowledging the complexities, the darkness, the chaos,
Yes.
and choosing to act in a way that brings light and order to the world, starting with ourselves.
Got it. Stories remind us that we are not just passive observers,
Right.
but active participants in this ongoing story of life. We have the power to shape the narrative, to choose our role, and to make a difference, however small it may seem.
That's a really powerful thought to leave our listeners with. We all have a story to tell. What kind of story are you writing with your life? What kind of hero are you choosing to be? Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of Jordan Peterson. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep striving for that balance between order and chaos that makes life truly extraordinary.